Hey everyone, this is Darkener, and I'm going to do a follow-up to the Discipline Priest Atonement Rotation. Um, there's been some changes since I did my last video, and basically they nerfed Power Word Solace a little bit more, so um, I'm just going to do a quick update to it. But first I wanted to go over the actual macro that I use when I atonement heal, because when you're atonement healing, you are casting DPS spells that heal nearby targets, and you need a way to actually to cast heals on people and then DPS on other targets fairly easily. So I use macros to do that, and I'll go over how I do it. Alright, so this is the infamous DPS assist macro that I use, and I use this pretty much however I need to. It covers everything that I need. Basically, it's a cast macro, and these are all basically just determining what target will receive this spell. Now, it depends on what add-ons you use and how you heal or atonement heal. What what add-ons you use, or whether you use the default raid UI that Blizzard has built in. So if you're using Healbot, Healbot has a specific HB target, which is the actual Healbot target. So when you create macros, you can always macro off of the Healbot target by using HB target. So in this case, my DPS/assist macro, it will first look and see if I have a Healbot target, the target of my Healbot target, and it's also an enemy. If that doesn't, if that's not true, that I'm currently have a Healbot target of target that is an enemy, then it looks at my Vuhdo target of target enemy, then my Mouseover target of target, then my Mouseover target, then my target of target, and then my target. It seems like a lot of targeting things, but basically what happens is when you hit this macro, it's going to start with this first thing, and as soon as it reaches a condition that is true, it just stops, and then it casts the spell. So as I step through this, my last thing here is just my current target. So as I go through, if nothing else evaluates to true, even this might not evaluate to true, it'll cast on that target. So if you only use Healbot, or only use Vuhdo, or only use a default raid frame UI, then you can take some of these things out. If you only use the default raid UI, then you can take out both this Healbot target of target and Vuhdo target of target comments, and just use these Mouseover ones, targeted target ones, and target ones. If you switch back and forth from using Healbot or Vuhdo or something in Vuhdo, like default raid frames in Vuhdo, you might want to leave them in. There's no reason not to, and if you use all three, I'm not sure why you would, but you could leave all three in, and if you had all three, the Healbot add-on, the Vuhdo add-on, and your raid frame UI, this macro would work with all of them. Okay, so let's go on to the specific DPS rotation macro that I'm using for my Atonement Priest. So basically you'll see I took the same assist macro strings for Healbot target, Vuhdo target, Mouseover targets, target of targets, and I just added them into a cast sequence. And at the end, the spells that actually get cast are Penance, then Holy Fire, then 4 Smites, and then 3 Power Word Solaces. Now, the problem with the cast sequence macro is that, first of all, it's pretty much hard-coded. If you're at the second Smite in this cast sequence, and you really want to just skip ahead to Power Word Solace, it's not going to do it. It's going to just do everything that's in the sequence, either until two things happens. It reaches the end of the sequence, or if you have a reset command in here, there's another option where you can say reset equals, and if you put a number in there, if you pause, say you say reset equals 1, and you're hitting this cast sequence button, if you pause for 1 second, it'll reset back to the first spell. There's no way with a cast sequence macro to check for cooldowns. You basically have to take spells that have cooldowns and put them towards the front, and then pad out the cast sequence with enough no cooldown spells that by the time you're finished and you go back to the first one, it's off cooldown. Okay, but if you want more control over your atonement healing, what I really recommend you do is not create one macro, one DPS button, so to speak. What you should do is split these out into individual macros. So take one, get rid of cast sequence and just do a cast macro for Penance DPS. Okay, now this one will do all the things that the previous one does, but just for Penance. Here's Holy Fire, here's Smite, and here's Power Word Solace. And then you would keybind these or click bind them if you're using Healbot or Vuhdo to the appropriate key or click that you want it to activate off of. So, and then I just wanted to say your basic mouseover macro, right? So there's a lot of talk about mouseover healing. Well, your basic mouseover healing macro is uses a cast with either your mouseover target or your current target and then the spell. Or basically, if you just put empty left and right brackets, that's the same thing as your current target. So this basically is a shorter way of doing it. It's just going to cast this spell on what your mouse is hovering over, or if your mouse isn't hovering over something, it'll do it on your current target. Okay, so there really isn't any thing better or worse than between mouseover macros and click macros. They really are the same thing. Whichever works for you is probably the best thing. Okay, so I took that DPS macro, the single button one, and I stuck it in here, so I'll actually use it. And I bound it to my Healbot, so DPS heal, Shift Alt click on a target will activate the DPS macro, and I actually can. So right now I'm targeting this dummy. So if I go over to Healbot and I do the macro, it's going to, well, that's where I was in the macro. I was in the middle of it and I didn't have a reset, so it's continuing its smites. Power Word Solace, Power Word Solace, Power Word Solace. Now it's going to go back to Penance. Then Holy Fire, then 4 Smites. Then sometimes there's like lag and it won't let me. Okay, the last power word Solace followed by the first Penance actually happens back to back, because your cooldown is over after you cast power word Solace, and Penance is an instant cast or instant channel. Alright, so that works, but what if I want to go over here and I'm going to go, this is Darken Rogue, and he's targeting one of these as well. So if I use the DPS macro on him, it's hitting this dummy, because that's the target that he is currently targeting. So when I did it with me, it did it on my target. And when I do it on Darken Rogue, it casts the DPS spell on his target. So using this, I can cast my atonement spells on whoever I need to. Say there's a guy over an off tank who's working on a boss that spawned off, and you have your main tank on the main boss, and you have an off tank over on some other boss. You can switch between your main tank and your off tank with your atonement healing, and give them heals, because you'll be DPSing their target, which is right next to them. So it's really good. If an ad peels away and goes over and attacks a mage, and you go over and you hover over the mage and you do your DPS atonement macro, it's gonna cast whatever the next thing is in your DPS atonement sequence on the mob that the mage is targeting. And hopefully the mage is if the mage drew aggro, then probably the mage is targeting it. Anyway, so alright, so how does this macro work now? Power word Solace only regenerates 0.7% maximum mana. I zoomed in my UI so things would appear bigger for this. So because of that, I had to add a third power word Solace. So when I go through my rotation, and I'll use these, I bound the DPS heal button to our macro to a key, so I can go over with the same macro bound to a key, I can go hover over here and hit the key, and it does the same thing. Alright, this is what I guess would be called Mouseover healing or DPSing. I can switch targets back and forth just by hovering over different players, because these players are targeting two different targets. Alright, so it's not exactly mana neutral. When I go through this, if I do it as fast as I can, I lose about a couple of K of mana. So you might want to, maybe not use one DPS button to cycle through Penance, Holy Fire, Smite, 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 Power Word, Solace, Power, all that stuff. You might want to just do it separately. I can go here and just do a Holy Fire, Smite, and if I want to, I can just keep smiting, because I do them. Oh, Holy Fire is off. I can go back to Holy Fire. You might want to have individual binds, click binds, or mouseover keybinds, whichever you prefer doing, for the individual spells within your atonement rotation, and then just remember your rotation and go through it yourself and modify it as you need to. If you get haste, maybe you can throw extra smites in while the Holy Fire dot is up. But anyway, that is it. So if you want the one button version of the macro, there it is. Take out this Healbot targeted target harm part if you don't use Healbot, and you use Vuhdo. If you don't use Vuhdo and you use Healbot, you can take the Vuhdo one out. If you might switch back and forth between both and try them out, you can just have this in the macro. It doesn't hurt. So I can go down here to Vuhdo and use my macro, and it will still work. So, and it'll be off of my Vuhdo target. Alright, so there you have it. That is the Atonement. Do it however you want. Okay, the other choice you have, okay, so that's one choice. The other choice you have is to eliminate Power Word Solace, go to your talents, and use Mindbender. Mindbender is on a 1-minute cooldown and it lasts for 15 seconds. And in my current level 90 at 306k, which I think is because of the I've got 2% maximum mana from the meta gem, which since it's 300k, I'm getting an extra 6k out of that. So that's why my mana is 306k. Everyone's mana is fixed. So Mindbender with 306k does 11 hits at 4,471 mana per hit, which is a total of 49,000 and some change mana. So it's just under 50,000 mana. And that's every minute. So if you want to not have to worry about having Power Word Solace in your rotation, you just make sure if you switch to Mindbender that you hit Mindbender when it's off cooldown. It'll actually allow you to keep healing without worrying about the mana regen. And it also does some DPS. Okay, so there it is. I will paste the macro for this in the comments, and if you want to split this out into the individual spells, you just take what's in here and change it from cast sequence to cast and put each spell behind there. Penance, Holy Fire, Smite, Power Word Solace. There you go. It's all explained. You should have no more questions. There shouldn't be any more questions about that. Alright.